He came home early, that's how it started. The front door clicked, and the big house held its breath, and there I was on my knees with a rag, while little Matteo balanced on his purple crutches and pushed a towel across the spill like a tiny firefighter. I'm Lupita, the housekeeper, the one people look through when they're in a hurry, and I'll be honest, when I saw Alejandro in the doorway, suit still, sharp eyes, tight from deals and traffic, I braced for the kind of conversation that ends with a box of my things by the gate. Matteo beat him to it, bright as a porch light, Dad. I stood almost a whole minute today. Aunt Lupita taught me exercises, and the room changed. You could feel it like a radio station tuning from static to music. I told him the truth, because lies don't help kids walk. I learned from my little brother, years of clinics and bus rides and watching therapists who didn't have time to explain. So I studied with my eyes, my hands, my heart, and I practice with Matteo on my lunch break before school, when the sun is low and the flagstones are warm. Alejandro stared at the rag in his son's hand, like it was a miracle and a failure. At the same time, I'm not paid extra, I said, because that's what men like him hear first. No, sir, I'm not asking for anything. I just want him to smile more. A child should smile every day. He swallowed hard, sent Matteo upstairs, asked me how long, how often, how I knew the practical questions people use when their chest is full of feelings they haven't named yet. He said something I didn't expect. Tomorrow I want to watch 6:45. I'll be here, and I nodded, even though men like him don't usually belong to mornings. We met the sun in the garden. Just me, the mat, 2 cones, a foam pad, and a boy who believes in trying again. And Alejandro sat on the warm stone like someone learning a new religion, eyebrows doing the math, phone in his pocket, instead of in his hand. And I talked the way I always talk to kids, who are scared but brave. We wake up the ankles. We tell the knees what kind of day it's going to be. We breathe like our ribs are flexible, you know what I mean? Matteo shook, wobbled, fought for the 30, almost fell. I caught him without making a movie out of it. That's a win. Gravity doesn't get to boss you today. And I saw Alejandro let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years. Over waffles, he asked real questions, not the checklist kind. And when he called me into his office later, I set my shoulders ready for boundaries, talk ready for rules. Instead, he said, I want this official. You focus on Matteo, we hire another housekeeper, and Lupita, I'll pay for school, the physical therapy assistant program at the community college, evenings, weekends. We'll make it work. I laughed, because joy comes out sideways when your whole life has taught you to expect less. I told him classrooms were for other people, he said. You already belong, let the paper catch up, and my eyes burned because sometimes kindness lands like an ambush. We built a routine, not Instagram magic, just repetition and sweat, and tiny celebrations, mornings with desert light, and the smell of coffee. Matteo timing holds on Alejandro's phone, me reminding him that shaking means strong muscles, learning to listen. Gabriella watching from the doorway. At first arms crossed like a shield, then a little softer each day. Matteo hit 1 minute standing, then 5 steps without the crutches. Careful, determined eyes locked on a point like he'd pickpocketed courage and didn't want to get caught. And Alejandro started canceling some meetings, staying through breakfast, learning how to spot without gripping, clapping, with his mouth closed, because kids don't need noise, they need presence. I'd head home at night to a small apartment that holds my mother's night shift size and my brother's textbooks. I'd fall asleep with my scrubs still warm from the dryer, and I'd wake up early for 2 buses, and the feeling that my work actually mattered. Yeah, that happened. Not everyone liked it. People who've never needed a hand are the quickest to police where yours goes. One afternoon, a friend of Gabriella's floated in on perfume and judgment, looked at me like I'd wandered into the wrong room, and said with a smile that cut, "The help shouldn't confuse her place." I would have stayed quiet because picking your battles is survival. But Matteo turned on his crutches like a storm. She's family, don't be mean to my family. And the house went very still, like it was choosing sides. Later, a man with money called Alejandro and tried to hire me away like I was a truck, to lease double the pay, a car insurance for everyone. And when Alejandro said no, the man laughed, that oily laugh people use when they think they own the dictionary. Everyone has a price. 3 days after I told Alejandro I needed to think, because the money would change everything. My mother could sleep at night, my brother could study without checking the clock, my bones could rest on a Sunday sometimes. And I cried because I didn't want to leave Matteo, because his face when he hit a new second on the timer is a kind of sun. Alejandro didn't guilt me, he asked if I was happy here, if I was growing here. What would happen to Matteo if I left? Then he matched the offer and added health insurance for my family, not because he owned me, because he finally saw the value of what I bring and wanted to say it in a language this city understands. People will argue with that, I know, what a dignity and a fair paycheck are allowed to hold hands. The day Matteo really ran, was on a scuffed school stage with paper stars and nervous parents trying to pretend they weren't crying. He set the crutches down, lifted his chin, walked 6 steps, sweet and steady, then surprised himself with 3 quick, joyful hops, and the room opened like a window in summer. He took the mic with that small, serious voice and thanked 3 people, his mom who never stopped pushing his dad, who finally sat in the grass, and me, Aunt Lupita, who believed before he did, and Alejandro said into the mic that I wasn't staff anymore, I was family. And people clapped, because that's what people do, but what mattered was the way Gabriella squeezed my hand and whispered thank you like a prayer. Alejandro kept his promise. Mornings stayed hours, and then he did something bigger. He set up a scholarship so I could finish school faster. He found space in a strip mall with big windows, and we painted it coral and called it Luz de Esperanza, light of hope. And the first week we had 3 kids, then 5, then a waiting list, and I hired a speech therapist who plays ukulele because laughing is therapy too. We fight with insurance, we lose sleep over paperwork, we celebrate toe taps like gold medals, and every time a child takes a step, while a parent pretends to read a magazine so they don't sob in public. I remember that day with the grape juice and the way a man's life tilted because a child was happy on a floor that needed scrubbing. Now here's the twist most people miss in stories like mine. The miracle wasn't money learning how to be generous. It was pride learning how to be quiet. It was a man who thought providing was the same as loving. Finally understanding that showing up is the currency kids understand. It was a housekeeper nobody saw stepping into the light she'd earned, and choosing not to leave when leaving would have been easier on paper. You could argue I should have taken the higher offer. Set clear boundaries, kept work as work and family as family, and I hear you, I do. But ask yourself who draws those lines and who they serve, because in that living room, I was not crossing a line, I was building a bridge, and on that stage, Matteo did not owe anyone a neat story. He owed himself a run. And in our clinic, when a child takes 3 steps and the room holds its breath, nobody is checking titles, they're checking courage. So that's my story, or at least the part where a millionaire came home early and found his son happy and had to choose what kind of man he wanted to be. The part where a woman with bus schedules and night shifts said yes to the life she was already qualified to live. The part where a kid with purple crutches taught all of us how to fight gravity. If you've listened this far, thank you, tell me straight. Did Alejandro make the right call matching that offer? Or did we blur lines you think should stay bright? Have you seen class or job titles used like weapons? And how did you push back? You know what I mean? Share where you're watching from, and a time someone believed in you before you did. And if this hit you in the chest, subscribe. Send it to the friend who needs to hear that. Showing up counts, and let's argue kindly in the comments about what justice looks like in a living room.